Test, test, test. Hey, what's up? I am hopefully live here. I'm just going to be turning on the chats. I'm also live on Twitch, but I don't know if I'll be able to monitor both the chats. My setup isn't really tuned yet for that. So I will be just kind of hanging out here for a second while I make sure that everything is going well. And then I will get into it. What we'll be talking about today, this brand new Svelte API. Okay, I checked my mic is the correct input. I'm going to do my very best not to cover the code with my screenshot of myself, because that would be a bummer. And we'll talk about what we've been working on, what we've been doing, and this new API. Now, if you have been paying attention to these new Svelte APIs, you'll know that this stuff's been under a lot of change lately. There's been change from how we load data into our components, how server-side stuff is dealt with, and just the existence of .server files in general has been a big change. And just this morning I ran an update and it informed me that there is a new hooks.server and a hooks client, hooks.client, hooks.server, so that way we can have server and client hooks. So this stuff is extremely liquid, man. This is changing all the time. That said, this API was being developed for a little while here, at least in the RFC stage of it, where they're chatting about the actual approach and whether or not some small things get changed and tweaked in practice now that it's out in the wild is a different story. But this stuff's out in the wild now, and you can go ahead and try it. I am going to be showing you a few examples of the new Form Actions API. And the Form Actions API is a way that we can easily and quickly progressively enhance our forms, use less code, less JavaScript, closer to the standard, the browser standard. And not only all of that, but it's also more likely to work without JavaScript, which is a big deal. And this is going to turn our forms into just basically closer to web standards overall. And you'll see very quickly that the process for this is really nice, and it's really, really fun to write this stuff. It works super well. It's pretty low code, and it's going to be how I do all data loading and mutations in SvelteKit from here on out. Currently we're doing GraphQL, and I just can't see myself doing that anymore after just the ease of this with this type of site, so to say. Not for every project. GraphQL has its advantages, but I'm talking about a site like Level Up Tutorials. Actually, this light right here, I turned it up really bright for something, and it's like, hit me. 1 second. Let me turn this light down. There we go. It wasn't much of a a key light as it was just like a blind me light. All right, this camera's good in low light. I don't exactly need a ton of light to blast me here. Okay, so we're not going to be talking too much about the plus routing file changes. There will be some of that in this video because it's inherently related, but we're not going to be diving deep onto that stuff today. We're going to be really keeping this to Form Actions, and I'm going to try to monitor the chat in here. Although, like I said, I can't monitor both the chats, the Twitch and the YouTube. So if you're out there and you want to ask me a question about this at any given point, you can ask it in the chat in the YouTube chat. I'll have that popped out here so that way I can monitor that and try to answer some of these things. Somebody says more volume on the mic. That's kind of surprising. Maybe turn up your audio. Let me see. Test, monitor, test. Hey, what's up? I don't know. If you're out there and you think that the mic is too quiet, let me know. I'm looking at the levels right now, and we're about level -10, so maybe I can bump that up on the input. Test. Is this even bumping? No, that's just peaking the mic at this point. sounds like I messed with it. Now I'm peeking it. Huh. I wonder why it's at -10. Who knows? Sorry, y'all. Shouldn't have touched it. Test. Test. Hey, what's up? Test. I'm going to tweak it until I peek it. Tweak it until I peek it. Test, test, test. Hey, what's up? Test. Hey, what's going on? Is this microphone sounding okay to y'all? Okay. Cool. Whatever. I'm going to leave it here. Test. Okay, sorry. Okay, so form actions. Let's get into it. Form actions. We love form actions. Let me show you a really quick thing that I put together. So collections. This is a new part of the website that isn't really even live yet. We're not doing a ton with this in terms of actually utilizing what are going to be called collections, I should say. But a collection is basically going to be, in the Level Up Tuts world, a collection of tutorials that are related for our library page. And on this library page, what we'll be doing is basically breaking them off into collections instead of having them all just thrown up onto the page. So I created a collection. It's not really super important, but what is important is the form here. So this form, in the CSS for this form is by no means done or anything, but the form for this here is basically a set of parameters to say what type of languages, how many tutorials, courses should we have in this collection, what languages, JavaScript, is there a promo within it, is it only targeting courses that are on sale. And you'll see that this form right here, when I click save, gives me this nice little toast message, collection update succeeded. And this page right here, as well as the new collection, add new collection, are both utilizing this new API. So first and foremost, I kind of want to show you what these files look like, and then we can talk about it as we do our own custom one for blog posts. So let me even close all of these files. I got a lot of files open, folks. Okay, so I'm going to go to my routes, and this is inside of our admin routes. So inside of our admin routes, we have a section for collections. So /collections/new or ID. Now inside of each of these is two files, a page.svelte and a page.server. Let's take a look at the new one first, because new kind of makes a little bit more sense, right? We're just creating a new one. And so this form is auto-generated for us. This is unrelated to the new API, but you can see I have this inputs component, which is a part of Level Up Tuts auto form, where I created a schema. That schema passes in what inputs I have, and that in turn generates all of these inputs here. It's pretty sweet. But what's neat about this is, in fact, let me just get rid of this. Let me get rid of this to do here. You can see I create the schema right here. So here is essentially the new forms API. Instead of having a special form component or something at all, what we do is simply use a form with a method on it. Now, most of the time when you have forms, they're going to be like a post method, right? You're going to send a post request to the server. And in return, what we're going to do in that post request is typically we're going to send a message to the server. That server is going to do something with that information from the form, maybe save it to a database, and then return a response. Okay, now I've written my own use enhance form action here, which we'll talk about in a second, but utilizing use enhance, you can have this form work with JavaScript with like no effort whatsoever. Let's go ahead and see what happens when I remove this use enhance, okay? So I have a form method and it's set to post. I just have a button of type of submit and I have some straight up inputs. That's it. Notice how there's no state, there's no API call, there's no await function running whatever, right? This is just a straight up form method post. What this is then in turn going to do when I add in some test data, visibility is public or unlisted, who cares, whatever. Let's click create. Now you'll see I have a full page reload. So this was a full page reload. This is the default functionality when you're submitting a form in the browser. It does a full page reload. Okay, so that's really interesting, is that, functions just like a normal form would, right? But where does that data go? Because if you'll head to my collections here, you'll see that it actually worked. It created a collection, test data right here. So where did that go? Well, it heads to essentially the page.server of the same folder, of the same route. So in my page.server, I have an actions export. So you export const actions. And then I have a default action. So on a new collection, right, when I want to create a new collection, if I run the default post form action, all it's going to do is hit page.server.ts with some information, and it's going to run the default action. Now, I've moved my actions into their own file to keep them a little bit more organized, so you're not seeing that function here. Let's take a look at what that function looks like. See, this is why I moved them over here, so I could have them a little bit more all co-located. Okay, so the create action will get access to the request itself, and then locals. Now, locals is where I include my user data for the current user that's logged in. So I pass in the current user data via locals to check their administrative role status. Are they an admin? If they are an admin, then they can continue. If not, return, notice this invalid 401. We'll talk about that later. Otherwise, what we're going to do is I'm going to then take the form data, because what happens with these forms is that you're submitting form data. And if you haven't worked with the Form Data API, it's a way of sending form data to and from, or just working with forms on the browser in general. It's a browser API. It's one of those ones that's existed and augmented over time. But everything comes in as a string when you use form data, right? It's not even a string. You can get entries, which is an iterable whatever. So what I have to do is take form data that comes in from the request, I match it up to our schema, and then I transform all of the data types to the correct data types as needed, because again, this is form data. Svelte is not going to get in the way of what form data is. And then I just simply create a new collection in our database, and I return the result, which is just an ID at the end of the day. Okay? So what's happening here? You submit a post request from a form on a page. That sends the default action, and that sends to the default action the form data under request dot, I believe it's request.form data. Let's see, request. Sorry, I made a lot of helpers for me here. Request, you get the request.form data, you await it, and then I used dot entries to get all of the entries, and then I transform them to what I needed them to be. Unrelated, but either way. So that information comes into our post request. We can then do whatever we want with it. I'm choosing to parse that data, save it to the database. You could do anything, whether that's sending an email or anything like that. Okay, so this is the most basic example. You have a form, post, that post goes straight to a server action. That action's defined by export const actions. Really nice, right? Now, sometimes you might have more than one action, and in that case, you can specify the name of the action besides default, and I can show you a quick example of that before I talk about the enhancement part of this. So in the update form, you'll notice that we have an action parameter or action argument here, or attribute on our form. So action is now equal to $!update. If you're not sure about the question mark, this is basically turning this into a query parameter, right? That's a browser API. And in this question mark update, that essentially is telling the server, if we look at our page.server, that this is a different page.server, that we want to run the update actions. Now, since this is an update form on an update route, this should probably just be the default, right? But I thought this was a good example to show that you can have named or multiple actions just by giving them a name other than default in your export actions. And again, if you have it as default, you don't need anything fancy there, it just does it for the default. And if you have it named, then you access it via a query parameter in the URL. Let's talk about this enhance bit. because by default, what you can do is just say use enhance. And enhance is an action that comes directly from $app forms. This is a Svelte kit action that comes bundled with Svelte, okay? And it comes bundled with Svelte, so let's go ahead and update one of my collections. Or let's go add a new collection, I'm sorry. And we're gonna see what happens now that I've added use enhance. So use enhance, and we're going to say it's unlisted, and yeah, that's fine, create. Now this time, you'll see that the page didn't do a refresh. This is because when we run use enhance, what it does is essentially it's progressively enhancing this form to do a prevent default, but it's still going to submit the form data to the API. So even though I clicked the button, nothing happened. The UI didn't refresh. There was no page change. What happens is I go to collections and there is a use enhance collection here. So it did create one. So why would you do it like this? Well, people use enhance here to do all sorts of things, which is really super nice. But what we can do in use enhance is that use enhance then allows you to run some code before the use enhance, before the form submits. But then also, if we return, you get access to, I think it's the results. I'll show you in a second exactly what it is because the API changed this morning. Of course, right? But if you return from this function, then console.log form submitted. Okay? So this is the most bare bones example. You have a function, and then the return of that function is another function that can then be the result of the form submitted. And so if we do this, you can see, let me pop open my inspect. Let's create a new collection, yo, and it's public or unlisted, who cares? Let's keep the crowd. I'm going to click create, and you can see that even though it's really tiny in here, form submitted did pop down in here into our console. So this form was submitted. Now you get more than just the fact that the form submitted. You get all kinds of information. You get the data that's returned from the action. You get whether or not the action was correct or invalid. You get access to all kinds of stuff. Now, one of the reasons why my use enhance looks like this is because I wanted to do some fun stuff with it. So our use enhance is a little bit more intense, and it's a little bit more intense because I created a custom form action factory, and this form action factory will pass in a message for the toast and then a callback function to run that actually gets the response. So if I wanted to, after I submit this, create a new form, what it does is it does the toast message based on the status. If the status is correct, if the status is successful, then it shows a green one. If it's not, it shows a red one with the error. And then if it is successful, it then runs the go to. Okay, so mine is just augmented, but this is under the hood here. What this form action is doing is ugly because of these implied types and all that stuff. But it is running essentially that exact same stuff where you get access to the result of the form action, and then inside of my toast enhance, I check to see if the result type is a success or the result type is an error. This is all in the weeds. We're going to be writing our own from scratch, and you can see this. I just kind of wanted to show you a high-level overview of what this is currently looking like. So, long story short here, all you need to do is create a form with a method of post that's going to allow you to create a custom action that hits a URL inside of the route of page.server of the same name, and then based on whether or not it's the default action or named action, depending on how you run it. And then if you want to prevent default, which many people will, and then maybe do their own toast message or clear the form or do anything like that, use enhance comes into play here. Now there's more to this because we also get a data import called form. We get a free invalidation on these mutations of that page route in lots of interesting stuff. So let's talk about that because there's more here. In fact, there is more. There's this. As far as the API changes have gone in Svelte, I'd say this is my favorite one so far. This thing rules. I mean, the last one ruled too, but this one rules. It's really pretty sweet. Okay, so we're gonna focus on the update. So the update UI here is pretty interesting. It's very simple. It's another form that's completely generated from our schema. Let's say I wanted to update Getting Jiggy with it. Getting Jiggy with it here is a promo. It's got public visibility. Okay, this is the way it looks, right? By the way, Monet or Money is asking why Svelte over Solid. I like Svelte's templating language. I like Svelte's data model, reactivity, all that stuff way more than JSX. I'm kind of over JSX to the highest degree. So, yeah, that's why I don't like JSX. Solid's fine. Solid's a good choice if you're picking React or another language. I like compiled languages into the DOM, so I just don't like the API comparatively to Svelte. Luthfi says, curious to see how to clearly handle missing form values in an action and how to handle multiple forms in one page. Yeah, so you know what, I can talk about both of those. So the multiple forms in one page, you're going to be doing so just by naming your actions. So if you have an action that's named update and one that's named create, and they both exist here, you would just have multiple forms on your page, and you'd call one with an action of $!update and one with an action of $!create. That's it. As far as how to handle missing form values in an action, so there's a lot of ways you can do that, but one way that I found, especially like client side, is that we're just relying on HTML here, folks. So let's actually go back to, because this is a good opportunity to show this. We have a collection here. We're going to create a new one. So you'll see title is a required field and visibility is a required field. They're not filled in. If I click create, this is HTML validation here. Please fill out this field. Now, that's not to say that you can't do more complex validations than this, but in a simple validation case, if you're checking to see if something is here or not, then HTML for the win, right? Just give this a required attribute on it. That's it. And again, I might open source this. If you're interested in my auto form library is open sourced, and except for this version is not published yet because I just worked on it last night. But if you're interested in this auto form schema business where you're generating the schema and creating required fields and stuff like that, I'll make sure that's open source too. Okay, so let's go ahead and head back to editing one. Okay, so we have this one to edit here. And I'm going to get rid of this to do out of here too. So the reason why I want to show this is talk about a bit about invalidation. So in this section of the site specifically, we have a load data function. So we need to do a couple of things. In fact, all courses does not need to be loaded here. I don't know why I'm loading all courses here, but these are just two MongoDB calls. This isn't a page.server.ts, so we're able to do MongoDB calls. We're doing database calls, and one of which is we're just pulling a specific collection based on the parameters and the ID. And so we have that collection here. Here's that collection, and that collection is returned. And then that collection then becomes available to us as data, as export let data, our page data, and we've destructured it out of here to say that, hey, here we have collection has been destructured out of here. Let's go ahead and I'm going to show you something neat. I'm going to console log collection on UI, okay, and I'm going to console log collection in load. And I'm going to show you something neat. When we run update on this, if I go to say, let's go ahead and have this limit be, let's say 10. Okay, collection update succeeded. I'm going to give this page, well, actually, before I give it a refresh, let's pop up in our console. You can see here, collection on UI ran, and this ran on the initial load. Okay, let's check out on the server though. Sorry, folks, I forgot I pulled this. Sorry, let me just do this example again because I didn't have anything ready here. All right, and in fact, let's make sure this is even saving to the database. I'm gonna pull up my database. Okay, getting jiggy with it. Okay. So I'm going to say that getting jiggy with it, the limit is now 11. We've upped the level of getting jiggy with it to 11. I'm going to click and save. Collection updated successfully. Man, why didn't that work? I was expecting this to update the invalidate the data. Why didn't that work? Unless they changed that API in the latest update, that was something that I remember existing, was to validate. Hold on one second. I'm going to pull up the docs here. This stuff changes a lot, folks. Side note, I like that console error you had for a sec and that SK is trying to use web standards. Yeah, totally. I do appreciate the web standardsness, especially because let's say use enhance fails or the user doesn't have JavaScript enabled for this type of thing. If the user doesn't have JavaScript enabled, then this form is still going to submit successfully. It's just going to do a full page refresh, which at the end of the day isn't that bad of a thing. Yeah, Trey, I hear you, man. This should have worked. So, in fact, it worked last night. So maybe things have changed. So form actions. Let's see. Form actions, named actions. Let's see. Invalidate. Update the form property and invalidate all data on a successful response. Without an argument, use enhance will emulate. Do I have to? Oh, is that the difference? Maybe I'm doing the classic thing of user error. So let's actually remove some of my fancy use enhance stuff, and I bet that is the reason why. We're gonna just say use : enhance. Enhance. Spell it correctly. Okay, there we go. Okay, use enhance. I'm going to refresh this page. That way we can get the correct data. There we go. So testing. Okay. So getting jiggy with it. This is the collection on the UI. If I pop open to the I term here, you can see collection on UI, collection and load. I'm going to update this. I'm going to click save, and then bingo. That's the issue. Okay. So by default, using use enhance, what happens here is that we don't have to do anything custom, and the data becomes then invalidated. So the new data has now come in as collection on the UI, and you can see collection in load. So if you do not have a custom function inside of your use enhance, then the form will automatically invalidate itself. Now, if we wanted to get this working with my fancy form factory thing here, I think I could just do a callback as the second parameter of here, and I can say oh, what are you doing? What are you doing, VS Code? Why are you adding a form tag on there? What are you doing? Then we just need to run an invalidate command. Now, how do we invalidate in SvelteKit? Invalidate is kind of a newer thing with the new data loading. So invalidation is not something I've actually done, but we're going to do it live. Invalidate. Okay, invalidate is an import from app.navigation. If we just run invalidate all, it will call all load functions to run. Or if we run invalidate, it will cause the load function of the current page to run. The function you know what? I couldn't tell you what my iTerm font is. It might be, who knows? It might be something fun. Yeah, let's see. Text. It is Fira code. Fira code, and it's the nerd font version of Fira code, so that way we get some of our fanciness in there. There's like glyphs and stuff. I love glyphs, right? You can tell I like glyphs. Okay, so if we just want to run invalidate here, back to the action, do you need a parameter inside of invalidate by default? I don't know if you do. We're going to try it. Who cares? Let's go for it, right? I'm a go for it kind of person. So we're going to bring invalidate in. Invalidate exists inside of app.navigation, import $, import invalidate from app navigation. And we could run this in the callback function to invalidate. Now it looks like it does want a parameter here. So again, this is my first time actually manually running invalidate, so forgive me here. And we just want to check to see if the URL path name, okay, so if the argument is given as a string or a URL, it must resolve to the same URL that was passed to fetch, including query parameters. So you would just want to run invalidate on the current URL. So if it receives the full URL, causes if true is returned, it can be useful if you want to. Interesting. Okay. So this can either be a URL string, a URL, or a function that returns a Boolean. So if I just say true here, does this invalidate it? I think it might. It seems kind of weird. Let's give it a try. Okay, so I'm going to update this. Click save. We get our toast message. I think that, let's check the data. It should be, say, 13 in here. Nope, did not invalidate it. That's interesting. Yeah, did not invalidate it. Okay, so why would that be? Either way, we just want to give this the current path name of the URL, the thing to invalidate. That would have been the easiest option to begin with. So if we wanted to get the current URL and current path name, that comes to us from this store. Doesn't it? I'm sorry. There's a lot of new APIs here, so forgive me for... I think we're getting app dot navigation. Oh, I mean, I'm sorry. We get the current URL and we can just return the current URL now? It doesn't like that. It wants a Boolean. Who out there, what's the easiest way to get the current URL path here to invalidate this? Invalidate, invalidate, invalidate. App.paths, app.go-to, and URL path name. Yeah, I know there's an import I can do. I just can't find it in the docs right now. path name. App.navigate, pages and layouts. Yeah, there is invalidate all. You're right. I'm spending way too much time. If I just say invalidate all and then bring in invalidate all, you're right. This will work. So I've changed invalidate to invalidate all. Let's bring up our command line here. Okay, click save. And now you can see collection and load has fired successfully, and it didn't goof up anything else. You know, I'm worried that it's gonna like refetch a whole bunch of, but invalidate all works. Fine, it's fine. I'm gonna have to take some time to look at the standard invalidate API, but it's really not something I've used before. Okay, so we now have our function. We have progressively enhanced it, and we can click save, and it will now invalidate and bring in the data. Cool. So let's quickly talk about the invalid function, because somebody is even talking about throwing invalid or anything like that. So we have on the server side our actions, which is collection update. And I do a little check here. And I'm checking to see if the user's an admin. If they're not, then return a 401. Now to return a 401, which is an unauthorized error, we're saying return an invalid function 401. Now you could throw an error here, but that has the network request as being unsuccessful, when in reality it's not that the network request was unsuccessful, is that the data was invalid, right? The user is not able to be authorized to do something. Oh, Luke Schaefer posted that it's in page. Yeah, it is in page. Thank you, Luke. I don't know why I was blanking on that one. I was even like pawing through the docs looking for it. Okay. So let's say if we wanted to, and I'm going to, for the sake of this example, just invalidate this request. Or let's do it in the update one, because that's where we're at. So within update, I just want to, by default, throw this invalid. And it's not really a throw, but it's an invalid function that you're returning, and that returns that the request was invalid. We'll take a look at what that request looks like. That invalid comes to us from SvelteKit itself, okay? So this is a new way of saying, hey, we want to say that this request was invalid. It's invalid via a new import. So now if I click save here, you're going to see that my toast message says update failed, but that's not the important part. The important part is that the request came back as being invalid. So if we look at our network request, okay. Oh, right. All right. This interface is way too big for me. Jeez. Oh my gosh. I can't even grab any of these little handles. So where my requests at? Let's click save on here again. Oh, you loser. What's going on here? There we go. You can see that the request did come back as a status of 200, so the request was correct, but the type of the response shows that it was a type of invalid with a status of 401, allowing us to say that, hey, this thing wasn't successful. Where if in fact we were to remove this invalid and run this as normal, save this again, let's take a look at what the request actually looks like coming back now. It comes back with type of success, status of 200, and then all of the data that we wanted to have in the form of a data object, and that data is then available to us. So that's really neat that it gives us these options. Now there's another really neat thing about all of this as well. We get access to the form information and the form submission stuff itself in the same way that we do with export let data. And we can do so with export let form. And I'm going to throw a little console log onto this form here, and we're going to be able to take a look and spy on what's going on here. It's going to give me some TypeScript guff, but that's okay. And let's head to our console. Oh, is it form? Am I tripping? I might be tripping here. Export let form. So this should work. Why is that not working? Export let form. And this is on a page.svelte. Export let form. Now this is curious. So this is another API that I haven't used yet, so it's probably not a good opportunity for me to show you this on a live stream. But the end result, the API or documentation show that this should be like a form with the action data. Hey, what's up? Hey, yo. Everybody go follow Clarkio. I love the username. Okay. So form shouldn't be null. I don't know why form is null here. Maybe it has to do with my use enhance. Maybe it has to do with the... It seems like use enhance is kind of the culprit here for a lot of stuff. In fact, let me go ahead and just turn off once again the fancy use enhance that I have. Maybe my fancy use enhance is a bit underbaked. Is maybe what I'm learning here. So we're going to use the default use enhance. And then now we're going to get access to, let's hopefully, yes, there we go. That's the ticket right there. So turns out my fancy form enhance is the problem. I am, of course, the problem. It's user error as always. This is live and it's being recorded both at the same time. So I will have this available and I might do a tuned up version of this as a separate video later. But you can see here what's interesting is that we end up having this form data value that is at first null, but when we submit the form, it comes in and it comes in with information about our form. For instance, the form data. Now, I am slightly confused because it looked like the example showed that this had a success property on it, but that just might be their own API. That's just their own API. Okay. So form after submitted then comes in as form, meaning that if you were to say something like £if form (.id) if, you could say form ID, that would be the new data here. Let's click save on this and the ID pops up in here. So that's really neat. Okay. Sorry for this little sidebar, but the form business here was being delayed because of my fancy use enhance that we're using. But in reality, if you just use the straight up use enhance, what happens is that a form data value gets populated from the server side data. If you don't need it, you don't need it. I don't know if I need it for this setup. Okay, all of that out of the way. Let's go ahead and write some greenfield stuff. Let's write some new code here so you can get a better vibe for what's going on. Because right now, so far, I've just been kind of showing you what we've been doing so far, but we haven't done anything from scratch. So I have my collections. They're all working fine. I have my fancy form action. I'm bringing in data from the server. I'm invalidating it. It's all lovely. Let's go ahead and head to posts. These are blog posts. And blog posts on the site and in our forms, blog posts. Yeah, I'm breaking things with my use enhance. I got really wild with my like custom use enhance stuff last night, so I was like really going nuts with it. But I did not stop to check to see if it was breaking the functionality that comes by default. I was just getting fancy with it. Okay. So, oh, that's funny that shows that it's an Amy Kaepernick authored blog post. I think I must have changed it. This is the development version of the site. I'm just going to tell you that right now. So some of this data isn't entirely accurate. So the current blog posts, if you have a blog post, you're going to see it's kind of broken. The current version of our form, hopefully I didn't crash the site with that. The current version of blog post forms looks like this. It is what it is, right? So, blog posts. That's the title. It's got a status. It's got an ID. And this former blog post, the old version of this was using GraphQL. And what we had was a page.ts file. This runs on the client or the server. And this ran git admin post, which is a GraphQL query, or git author reference, which is also a GraphQL query. And then what it did is it had the data available to us as admin posts and update posts. That data was then able to be done all this. And then what I had is a custom post form wrapper, which then called my auto form, which brought in all this stuff. We had to do our own API. Where'd you go? That's the wrong one. We had to do our own API calls. What's going on here? Sorry, I have literally too many things open all the time. I think that's just how it goes now. Okay. So I had a post form component that then loaded up our auto form. It created our form from a schema the same kind of way it does now. Either way, the most important part is that I had to do on submit. Then I had to run a GraphQL query that with the variables from the form and then run a toast and check this out. All of which none of this would work without JavaScript. So that's a big bummer. I'm going to go ahead and kind of just start removing things from this. And the first thing we're going to do is remove this fancy post form, and we're going to create a normal form. And the form action is going to be, or sorry, the form method is going to be a post. And right now, no action. Now, inputs is going to come from a library that we're using, and button is going to be our own button. And this is going to be update post. Okay. Inputs comes from auto form. I'm going to start just removing stuff. We don't need this on submit stuff. I'm going to get rid of it. And this model business admin post, I'm going to get rid of this stuff. We're going to get rid of our toast, our post form. Let's just start totally fresh. We're going to export let data, which is of type page data. Page data comes into us from $types. Import page data. Import data page. Import page data. Yeah, IPD. IPD. Where's my snippets, yo? Open snippet view. I import layout data, import page data. Page data types. Oh, PDT. PDT. There we go. Page data. Someone asks how you would redirect after submitting the form. We actually just we did that in one of ours in the new plus collections. I just added a callback here using the go-to method, and we're just simply going to the page of the ID. So after you create one, it's going to somewhere. But you have access to that inside of the use enhance. You can do anything you want after that form submits, including redirecting via JavaScript, right? Sorry if I breezed through that. My fancy enhance is kind of goofing things up. So we're not going to do fancy enhance for this one. We're going to do straight up enhance. We're just going to do normal enhance. Okay, so inputs here. Imports need some stuff to work. It needs a model. Now, I want to grab that data. You'll see that I've already done kind of preemptive data loading on this component. That preemptive data loading comes from page.server.ts. I'm just doing a find one of the ID and returning the post. So that's in page.server.ts. And so I'm loading that data on the server side, and you can see, oh, my author ID is auto-populating here, but let's bump this size down. This thing's being wild here. We're going to go to blog posts. We're going to edit the blog post, and you can see the data is officially coming in as data. And then inside of here, post. You can tell this is, active. You can tell this is what kind of data this is because all of the values are hello, and hi. This is how I do it. Okay, so update post, this is kind of working. The data is coming in at least, so we have the data, but we don't have the model. Now, I've created the model and the schema and all that stuff for this already, so you don't have to worry about that. This is an auto form where what I do is I have a schema, the post schema, and then I have a LUT schema to autoform schema function where I transform my schema into the autoform style of schema that I want. And then LUT input. We can call this fields. Let's call this fields to keep the naming consistent. Fields. Fields. And then we can pass fields into inputs. Just please ignore TypeScript for now. Autoform schema is the type. There we go. Okay, so just in a couple seconds here, what we've gotten is we should have a form. Nice. Now the data is loading, but the data isn't being brought into the form. So to bring the data into the form, I want to grab my data. I want to grab my post out of data. So we're going to say $, then we're going to bring in the parens, and we're going to say post is equal to data. And then we can pass in post. Let's get rid of post form over here. This thing is obsolete. I think this property is initial data, and it's going to give me a TypeScript error because I haven't finished the types for this yet. But either way, this form should now populate. There it is. It's populated. Cool. How do I auto import with Vite aliases? I don't know. I have the aliases set up in TypeScript as well in the TS config, and then I have it set up in the Vite config, and it just works. So I couldn't tell you. Unfortunately, that's one of those mysteries where it just works for me. So TypeScript maybe being the culprit. So let's talk about what we've done here. We've created a form with the method of post. It just has inputs and it has some data. That data is coming from the server side. If I were to click update post at any point right here, I think it would, I don't know if it would just fail or what it would do. There's no action here. I click update post, nothing happens. Update post, yeah, literally nothing happens. Also, I think I probably need a type submit for something to happen. Just classic browser API stuff. I bet if I click this, the page just reloads. Post method not allowed. Actions, no exact actions exist for this page. So that should give you a nice little inside view into some of these error messages. Basically, I'm trying to submit a post request to an action that does not exist. SvelteKit complains. So let's head to posts page.server.ts. Okay, this is where we create our action. The reason we create our action in here is this is the server-side route for this file. Server-side route. We send a post message over here. It's going to automatically load the default action over here. So we're going to say export actions, which is the default here, is equal to, export const actions. That's what you need. And then we can give this a default action. Now the default action here is going to be a function, async function, and or you can do an arrow function. I kind of like arrow functions in this case just because of their compactness, but that's it really. So we have an action, and this is the default action. By default, this action is going to give us access to what would be the event here. We can call this event if you want, or you can call this, you can get the request, I think. You can get the request, you can get the, sorry, scrolling. Yeah, you can get the request. You can get, now you can get cookies, which is neat. You can also get locals, Now, I've already done all of my my pre-auth on locals. So locals for me includes the current user information. It won't include that for most people, but we have like an auth check step in there. I can do a tutorial on that at some point as well, considering auth is such a big thing that people aren't doing a whole lot of, and this locals really makes it a lot easier. So I'm gonna bring up my collections API because this is only my second time doing this. So we get the request, we get the locals. Now this comes in as a type of actions. Now, I wasn't quite sure when you have, like TS types, it's really easy to type this kind of thing. But like if I were to say actions, let's see if that allows me to bring in actions. There we go. Now I got some types in here. So we get access to the request and locals. The first thing I want to do is my normal authorization check. If authorize action, and we're going to say if locals includes a user that's an admin. Oh wow, Copilot. A lot of vomit there. Okay. If the user has the correct or does not have if the user does not have the correct authorization level, return 401 invalid. Okay? Otherwise, let's just say return success true. Okay? For funsies. And then likewise in our page, let's bring in the just standard use : enhance. Let's bring in the standard use enhance. You know, I gotta love these auto imports. Auto imports are the best. I use them just nonstop. So we've enhanced a form. We're sending that information to the default action that we're checking to make sure the user has the correct information. And then for fun, also, let's just go ahead and spy on that request as it's coming in, and we can return successful. So let's go ahead and we have this as the update function. We can run update post here. This time when I update the post, oh man, how do we hide this? How do we hide this giant section right here? The funnel? Okay, I don't need the funnel, but I also don't need this. Ay. Show overview. There we go. I just want the request, folks. Okay. So we click update post. You can see that request happens. Success, and it has invalidated our data successfully. Status, type of success, status of 200, and then the data return is success true. Okay? Beautiful. So now what's happening is we very clearly wrote a form that has been enhanced, and it's hitting the default action. That action is hitting the server. It's probably console logging the request here, and then it's authorizing. And since I am authorized, I am an admin, it's returning success true. If we check this out, you can see this is the whole request here. This is the whole request. Where are we at? Including everything that we would want about everything. Headers and all sorts of stuff. And form data included. Now, again, I wrote my own helper for this. So let's see. I wrote my own helper for this to pull out the form data from request. Why did I do that? Because I wanted to transform it against our schema. But if you've never worked with form data before, it might be interesting to know that form data, we can say const form data is equal to await request dot form data like this. And if we were to take a look inside of form data, it might not be what you expect, okay? If you haven't worked with form data a lot before, you might be thinking that form data is just going to include a whole bunch of stuff. But look, look at that form data. You might be thinking, well, I can't access my data from this form data. But what happens if we were to do form data dot entries as a function here, like this? Form data entries, and now we submit this form data entries, and you can see it's a generator. What? Why is this a generator? So does that mean I have to do form entries or form data.get and then a string of title. What is this? Form data.get title. So update post. Let's see if this gets me my title. It does. It gets me my title. Does that mean I got to do this for every single input? I don't want to do that. So that's why I wrote the helper. The helper simply does, let's see, all right, it should be in actions. Actions, collections, actions. Look at me. The is Git Form Data. I wrote a little helper, Git Form Data. Git Form Data. And then post. Posts schema. And now my data will come back to being the correct data. Again, this little function, all it's doing is it's running entries and then using that generator, it's looping over it and then checking against the schema. And if the type is an int, it's turning it into an int. If it's a date, it's turning it into a date. Because everything that comes in from form data is going to be a string. So now if I do update post here, once again, you can see all my stuff comes in. Status, active, title, slug, all of the stuff. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. Now, one thing you're going to notice is that my tags array is empty. This is something I still need to fix in my data transform. It's not bringing in the tags correctly. That's fine. It's got to be an array of strings. Right now, it's just empty. I'll fix it. Again, I just started this stuff yesterday. So most of this code that you're seeing here today in action is stuff that I wrote yesterday. Okay, so we're getting this data from our blog post. Now the blog post doesn't have a body, that's fine. There's a reason for that, but it's not one that's important to this video. And this is just an update action. So we're gonna want to say posts dot find one and update. This is Mongo const post data equals find one and update. The one that we're going to want to find is ID from data.id, and we're then going to want to update it with all of the new information. Data. Okay. I can definitely show you what the Git Form Data helper looks like. Let me just complete this example really quick, and then we can do that. TypeScript kind of makes some of this obfuscated a little bit, so it seems like it's harder to parse than what it is. So yeah, we're finding one and update, and then I do need this return document after because I'm using the native MongoDB driver. I need return document after to get the new document, and then I can simply return post data return post data dot value. Okay. So what should happen here is now the default actions run. We're authorizing it. We're grabbing the data. We're transforming it. Post data itself is then finding and updating the query on Mongo, and then we're returning the new value from our action. And that means when I click update post, I broke it. All right. Because it broke, returned from an action cannot be serialized as JSON. I would imagine why would that not be JSON? Unless I bet this is failing Mongo validation. I bet that's what's happening. And that's fine. We don't need this to pass Mongo validation right now. What kind of questions do you all have about these actions here? I know it's, I'm just coding here. 500 error still. Oh, because I'm still returning this value. Let's check that error though. This is the part I just like start tossing in console logs. I'm gonna stop returning anything just so this stops breaking when I run this. Oh, so post data dot value. What can't be serialized? The dates? Does anybody know why this can't be serialized? Are dates not able to be serialized as JSON? Csrf and actions. You know what? If you're since all of these things, Osage asks, I was wondering about CSRF, cross-site request something forgery, maybe? I don't know. Basically, we're talking security in actions. Since all these things are same site, same URL, you can use same site cookies, HTTP only cookies, and all of these things are in my understanding, locked down to the point where it almost doesn't matter, because the way that we've always worked is we have a separate API server, and then having to set up cores and worry about CSRF between a separate API server and my own UI server is like way more complex than if you have a request going to the server of the same origin, where the concern there is basically nil because it's the same server, right? It's not a public API even. So, if anybody is out there smart enough to know about Json serialization, I would imagine that it's these created at dates that are the problem. JavaScript date event.toJSON, a string representation. Oh man, so does that mean I have to loop over my data all the time and convert dates to strings? Anybody out there who is listening and knows a little bit more about this serialization business, let me know, because you know what? This isn't something I've had to do. Let's see. So when we update post, the error that comes in, 500 internal error. The error is coming in from the server side. Oh, it even tells me right there. Of course, I shouldn't have had to guess. It tells me that it is the the admin content. So that's great. Data created at return from an action cannot be serialized as JSON. Date cannot be serialized as JSON. You know what? I wonder about the serialized as JSON business. Like, data can get stored in all sorts of ways, and we're gonna have to make sure everything's JSON serializable before we return it all the time. That feels like it could be a pain in the butt. For now, I'm going to do a quick hack for this. So close your eyes, everyone, as we say const new data is equal to post data dot value, new data dot created at is equal to new data dot created at. Is it to ISO string? Let's see. Or is it just like to string? Or is it just to JSON string? I'm just going to do to string because I honestly don't know the difference between an ISO string in this context. And then we're just going to return new data. This is the hacky method. This is the non-solid doing this forever kind of way. I just want to get this working. Boom, click update. There we go. Okay, now it's going to be a different one. Which one is it? Cannot read properties of undefined toString. You loser. What is going on? New data created at, I wrote create at because I am not smart. Updated at. Now updated at. First is created at. Now it's updated at. Okay, let's do another one. Updated. Yeah, this is a first-hand look into pitfalls you might hit when doing this stuff, right? Update post. Success. We have success here. The response with all of our fake data. Here we go. Including a string of the date. Oh, ISO string is just YYY. Yeah, good call, Matt. I panic sometimes and I forget my fundamentals when I'm drowning. Cool. Yeah, Matt offers some additional information on Csrf tokens. Again, it's not something that we have to worry about necessarily with this, because again, it's the same origin. You can do with stringify ANG parse. Like you would just run that on the entire thing, stringify ANG parse. I don't know what that is. Let's see. Just JSON parse. What? Oh, you mean like stringify and parse. Oh, so I see. So Yathin, yeah, Yathin is just saying to say post data dot value and then first run JSON dot stringify and then JSON dot parse. This kind of stuff really annoys me, but at the end of the day, I'm just going to write a helper function for it, and it's just going to work. So that's the shorthand or the easy way. I was doing it the hacky way, but this is the easy way. You can see works. Same. Cool. Easy peasy. Cool. We now have ourselves an action that works. We wrote this action from scratch, and it works. Let's take a dive into this use enhance now that we're not using the fancy use enhance. Let's talk about use enhance because use enhance includes a lot more important things than what we've kind of talked about so far. So by default, this function just kind of works, and with use enhance, it does nothing, right? It does nothing in terms of the page, right? So that's like nice that we have use enhance, but if you don't want to write your own factory function use enhance and you just want to do something simple like a toast message, or you want to do a redirect after the page and you don't want to have some sort of reproducible pattern like what we've tried to do here, let's take a look at the use enhance. And this changed overnight, so I am going to be working on some new information here. This literally, I ran an update this morning and this changed, so that's how it is. So use enhance allows you to have a function. Now this function as the argument here, or the prop inside of this, allows you to then have a callback, which then gives you access to data properties inside of an object. Those properties are form, data, and cancel. Now cancel allows you to do what you would suggest that it does. It allows you to cancel from running the request. If we run just simply cancel like this, it stops you from running the request. So if we click update post, you'll see no network request has ever gone here. Network request never gone, okay? And so that's what cancel does. Now, why would you want to do this? You could do all sorts of your own validation in this, right? You could say if my name is equal to Scott, if the value of this particular field is greater than this particular field, cancel and throw some kind of an invalidation. Let the form know that it's an invalid form, right? Now, how might you do that? Because we have this cancel function, but cancel, all it's going to do is prevent the request from going through. Well, we have form and data. Let's take a look at form and let's take a look at data. Click update. console log. So form is our actual form itself. This is the HTML element of the form, and form data is a form data. Just like what we had on the server side, it's a form data. So if you wanted to do form data, do we have to do await form data first? Let's actually, I think we do, yeah. If this is an async function, console, let temp equal await data dot form data. Why the red here? Oh, it can't be an async function? Is that true, that this can't be an async function? I feel like that's not true. Or is form data just the form data itself? Like if I were to do data.get title, I bet this is the answer right here. Of course, I'm always trying to make this harder than it is. I bet this is the answer. Yeah, the data is already form data. Yeah, I'm just being silly. So hello, there we go. Okay, so we can access to the form itself and the form data. Okay, sorry, I'm kind of hitting the wall here. I think we'll probably be done in just a minute. So, you know, I haven't worked too much with invalidating this kind of stuff here just yet. There's so many cool, neat things here. There's a lot of neat stuff. Let's talk about the return from here, because the return now includes some stuff. And that return, in the past, this return was just the data response data. But if we console log this out, you're going to see it not so much anymore. We click this. We now get access to more information inside of the return. The return now gives us access to the data as form data. It gives us access to the elements of the form element. It also gives us access to any sort of error information, but it also gives us access to the result and the resulting JSON data that's returned. So you can say result and then result.status is equal to success. In fact, let's do this as an alert. If result.status is equal to success, alert post updated, right? Sure, I guess I'm gonna do this else. Let's go ahead and run this here. We can see this alert pop in. Alert update post. Sorry, let me click update post here. Update post, and I'm not seeing this alert pop in. Result.status. Oh, type.success. Why did I do status? Type. Result.type. Man, this is the kind of stuff that happens, right? Why didn't TypeScript check that out? Oh, because this is not currently typed. How do you type this? It's the type of action result. Of course, and it's not liking this. Unexpected token, you gotta be tripping here. Why is it an unexpected token? This is a colon action result. Oh, it's an unexpected token because this is a Svelte template. Blah, blah, blah. That's why. Yikes. Okay, so yeah, actions are really not scary. And in fact, they've really transformed how I like to do forms in Svelte already, and it's been less than 24 hours. So, for me, it was pretty nice. All right, either way, we run update post, post updated is now a success. You can see update post, post updated, and that's based on the result type success. Okay? So anytime you want to do anything after a form is successful or not successful, you can do it within the return function from use enhance like this. Okay, so that really covers a ton of our bases. Now there's some more things in here like apply action. There's some more around progressive enhancement, writing your own progressive enhancement. Somebody did want to see our transform data function, which I'll show that as well. But you should get the idea now that basically what we can do is write a normal form with a method of post using our action that's based on either a default or a named action. We can have just normal form inputs. Now the coolest thing about this is that with this auto form library, I have all these inputs being generated, but you could just as easily throw in another input in here, type text, name, yo, and this is going to get passed along to the server side as well because it's an input in this form. It's using HTML forms, and we love HTML forms. I gotta say, it took a big jump in my brain. My caveman React brain. My caveman React brain says, all right, you have an input. What do you got to do with that input? You got to control the input. And so I wrote this whole auto form library, and the entirety of the auto form library, we check out our post form. I'll show you this thing. Auto form library, it takes a schema, it has an on submit, it gets initial data, and auto form itself is a tremendous mess. And it's not because of me. I mean, I wrote it, so you can blame me, but autoform is a mess because I'm trying to control the state of every single input, including the value. And when you have a giant form, you create a big data tree that's a big data store. And then each time a field is updated, you have to track where the location of that field is updated in the big store, and then the big store populates changes through everything. And you just say, why do I have this big object of this big data set controlling a form, when in HTML we have inputs, we have a form, we can use that form, we can grab that form data, we can do anything we want with it. If you need a individual input to be controlled for some reason, right, you want to have it all transformed to uppercase or something like that, you want to control an input, you just pop in an input and bind its value and then update it within the function or in the Svelte component. This is one of the reasons why I love Svelte, and I love SvelteKit compared to React or anything like that. I don't want to have to control all my form inputs. And so then I created the new inputs type, or the new inputs component from AutoForm, and there's no state here. All it is it transforms the data into components, and then it picks the right input, plops in the default value, and doesn't use any state whatsoever. There's no state. And I love it. I've like totally abandoned the state, and I can now get access to my form data. So let's move into, after that rant, epic React rant, what's a Svelte live stream without a React rant? Let's check out my Git Form Data. So Git Form Data accepts a schema. Now this schema looks something like this. Now the schema here, I use content types, which is kind of like a CMS style thing, where this is like kind of BSON schema like, but it's not. And so I take a schema and I take the request and I pipe them into Git Form Data. Git Form Data, first thing it does is it gets the form data object from the request. So the request itself is coming in as a request. The Git Form Data from requests first awaits and grabs the form data, then it runs form entries, and then I grab all of the form entries from here and I pipe them into a JavaScript object. That's it. So I'm taking all of these things from a form data and I'm just converting it straight to a JavaScript object. Now the problem with that is that if form data coming in from a JavaScript object, ints are strings, dates are strings, everything's are strings. And my database has data types, right? So what I then do is I feel like I'm like going crazy here. My hat's like flying off. Then I run transform form data types, and I pass in the newly gotten JavaScript string data and the schema itself. From there, I basically am just matching the types, and this function isn't done. So if you notice, but I'm saying like, oh, if the schema property type is equal to bson types int, then I convert it to an int. If it's the type of a boolean, convert it to a boolean. If it's type of array, right now I just return an empty array. That's why that thing doesn't work. But either way, I'm just transforming the data types to whatever they're supposed to be. So what this function is doing is it's first grabbing form data, converting it to a JSON string. Then I'm running it through this thing that checks my schema, and then will make sure that the data type is the same in which my database is expecting. Now, eventually I'm going to throw in some logic in there to like throw a validation step in the future, right? That's it. The only thing I want to show you guys at some other point is my locals setup. I have my whole authorization. In fact, we've moved our entire auth system into SvelteKit, and I'll have to show you that entirely another day because it's a big old thing. It's a big old thing, but we have our auth entirely in SvelteKit now, which was also a new change that I did, where what's happening is on each request. In fact, I can show you the hooks in server just to give you a this is just a little sneak peek. Okay, a little sneak peek here. So I am checking this is the handle function from hooks.server. The event comes in, the event request headers get. So I get the cookies header, I then parse the cookies, and then I run my authenticate user. If my user has been authenticated, they will have a access token, a user object, and a refresh token. And then I choose to, if the refresh token and access token exist, I choose to update those tokens each time to say, just to append the set cookie with an access token, and that it's an HTTP only, same side strict and secure cookie, so that way this cookie cannot be utilized on the front end. The only difference here is that I set event.locals.user to be equal to user. Now this is giving me a TypeScript error right now, but it's not because locals doesn't expect there to be a user. It's because user is potentially a null or undefined. So that's why. So that's it. And after you set events.local.user inside of your hooks, every single time you have a action, that user is available to you in locals.user. And that's how I do all my authorization. It works very much like our GraphQL did with context. So it was a nice and easy change for us. I'll do a deep dive on this some other point, telling you how to do authorization inside of Svelte like this. We wrote our own auth system. It was not bad. Anybody have any questions before I peace out? I got to return some headphones to Amazon. I didn't need them. Also, hey, we do Svelte content every single week over here at Level Up Tutorials on Fridays. In fact, I'm going to be doing another Svelte video tomorrow. Not going to be live, but it'll be published about how my thoughts and feelings and like the post of moving to this whole page in server.ts and this whole like just a little bit of a decompress on how I feel about all of these changes, which, you know, spoiler alert, I like them a lot. Also, we have new Svelte content all the time. We're going to have the greatest and latest SvelteKit course of all time on leveluptutorials.com coming to you the moment that version 1 hits. We're going to be doing a massive amount of Svelte content. Level Up Tutorials will be renamed Level Up Svelte Tutorials because I'm not serious, but there'll be a lot of Svelte content, especially when this hits version 1. I got a lot to say about this stuff. I got a lot of real world experience, and I got a lot of stuff to build. Let's face it, I got a lot of stuff to build. Other than that, this is the new Level Up tutorial site. Don't judge it by these forms. The CSS for them is not done. What is some cool stuff along the site? The library page. We got a lot of stuff going on this page. This is going to be collections, by the way. Check out these cards. In fact, maybe I'll show you another time this action that I wrote. See how the text fits into these cards? That's being done with a Svelte action that I wrote. That's really lovely. But this is what the collections feature that we worked on in this video is. Look at all this. Look at all this. Yeah, I'm using container queries and fit text and some 3D stuff. I'm going nuts on this redesign. So yeah, you want to learn Svelte? We got it. There we go. Well, it's broken right now, but hey. It's in development. The site's hopefully going to be launching by November, so you're going to see a lot of big changes to this thing over the next few weeks. Either way, that's all I have here today for you in this stream. If you want to learn more Svelte, leveluptutorials.com leveluptutorials.com. Sign up to become a pro today. Check back on this channel tomorrow. I'm going to be doing a YouTube video on my thoughts about the whole routing changes now that I've been living with it for some time. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one, and I hope